Most of the cuisines of the world are based on readily available local foods. France, for instance, uses the egg to thicken sauces, lift her soufflés, and make her omelets. Mexico's cuisine is based on corn. It makes her tortillas, the basis for virtually every Mexican meal. I have always enjoyed the colorful, fresh meals of Mexico. Every Mexican housewife is an innovator, and the food changes character from state to state. Lately, Americans have become more familiar with the great variety of Mexican foods. There is, however, a stand selling tacos or burritos on almost every corner in America, and that, unfortunately, has provided the only introduction that many people have had to Mexican cookery. That's about as reasonable as judging American cuisine by her junk food or, God forbid, her frozen TV dinners. There are subtleties in Mexican cookery, lost to us because of our preconceived notions about their cuisine. I will try to emphasize the lighter aspects of Mexican cookery. The sauces and peppers don't really have to be too fiery, and the beans, when handled properly, are not all that unappealing. Fresh fruits are used in abundance, and don't forget the avocado, a glorious green fruit that is a virtual signature of Mexican cuisine. So let's drift southward lazily and have a fiesta of beautiful Mexican food. I can't bear to even think of a Mexican meal that doesn't begin with a huge bowl of guacamole. That lovely green chilled sauce has myriads of admirers all over the Americas, and even in England now, too. One of my favorite Mexican hors d'oeuvres is nachos. They are crisply fried tortilla chips with cheese melted on them and bowls of guacamole and salsa fresca to dip them in. It's a perfect beginning for a meal, and it goes delightfully with margaritas, a Mexican cocktail made with tequila. The nachos are also lovely with a Sangría Bianca, a version of the familiar red sangria, but made with white wine. For my guacamole, I first chop an onion in my blender with a sprig of cilantro, using the water method. Cilantro is Mexican parsley. While the chopped onion drains, I peel and seed 3 large, ripe avocados. When I buy avocados, I look for ones that yield to gentle pressure. There is an easy way to peel an avocado, too. I cut them in half lengthwise all around the seed and then unscrew the 2 halves. Pull the avocado apart. I then take a large tablespoon or serving spoon and, cupping the fruit in my hand, use the spoon to scoop out the meat from the shell. This works best if the avocado is somewhat soft, but not too soft. It's much easier than pulling off the tough skin bit by bit. I then mash the avocado in a glass bowl with a silver fork. And while I am mashing the avocado, I add a tablespoon of lime juice to keep it from turning brown. I then peel and seed 2 tomatoes and chop them up. Stir the tomatoes and onion into the mashed avocado. I then add half a cup of sour cream and a small can of diced Ortega chilies. I always feel a teaspoon of spiced salt and 1 of granulated pepper accentuates the avocado's flavor, too. A 1/2 teaspoon of chili powder and a minced garlic clove can be added if you feel adventurous. If you have asbestos taste buds and will feel slighted without a bit of fire, add a diced jalapeno chili. Be ready to call the fire department, for they are hot, hot, hot. I combine the ingredients, mixing them well, and then cover the guacamole tightly, put the seed back into the center of it, and refrigerate it. To make the nachos, I usually buy a bag of fried tortilla strips. If the tortilla strips are unavailable, I generally use some sort of corn or taco chip. I then grate a cup of yellow cheese, like a mild cheddar, and a cup of Monterey Jack. I then line a baking sheet with foil and put down a layer of the chips. I sprinkle the cheese on generously and bake the nachos for 6 to 8 minutes at 400 degrees. These should be served without any delay so that the hot chips can contrast against the cooled guacamole and the salsa fresca. Salsa fresca is also easy to make and very rewarding. It's great on the chips as well as a convenient dressing for many things. Try it on a cheese omelet some morning. Bliss and rapture. And it'll wake you up, too. To make a salsa fresca, peel, seed, and chop 4 tomatoes. Chop an onion and a bell pepper in the blender. Mix together the chopped tomato, onion, and pepper in a bowl, and then add a can of diced Ortega chilies and a minced jalapeno. I then pour in a cup of bottled taco sauce and stir everything up and cover it in the refrigerator. The salsa is much better several days after its creation. If you are a cilantro lover, a teaspoonful, or a tablespoonful if you like it, of the chopped up cilantro adds an assertive and authentic Mexican note. When I serve the nachos, the guacamole, and the salsa fresca, I use Mexican pottery bowls for the salsa and the guacamole, and a large straw basket is a great container for the nachos. These all make a lovely and a sprightly appetizer. Most of us think of Mexican food as heavy, but I'm out to parade the delicacy of her cuisine. When I remember memorable Mexican meals, I always drift back to a meal I had in Acapulco once that was a milestone for my education in Mexican cuisine. We had delicate enchiladas filled with chicken breasts, cream cheese, Monterey Jack cheese, and chilies and almonds. And a light green chili sauce covered everything, and it was devastating, believe me, a dish that indelibly etched itself into my mind. I have watched the Mexican ladies make tortillas. It's a fascinating sight, but I buy mine. They're available virtually everywhere. They should be softened before they are used. Now, I heat about 1 inch of oil in a frying pan, and when it starts to bubble slightly, I dip the tortillas into it one at a time and pull them out as soon as I can. This softens them and coats them with oil so that the edges won't dry out while they bake. Enchiladas can take many forms. They can be folded, stacked, or rolled. I like them best rolled. I poach 2 chicken breasts in water with a tablespoon of minced onions for about 1.5 hours. I allow them to cool in the stock and then skin and bone them. I break the meat into shreds with my hands. Then I grate 16 ounces of jack cheese and mix it with 8 ounces of softened cream cheese. I stir together the shredded chicken and the cheeses and add a 1/2 cup of chopped almonds and a drained can of sliced black olives. I then chop 3 green onions and stir this in. I divide this mixture between the 12 tortillas and roll them up and lay them seam side down in a baking dish. Then we make a sauce to bake them in. I chop a bell pepper in the blender using the water method. I mix the chopped bell pepper with a 1/2 cup of sour cream and a cup of green taco sauce or green chili sauce. I pour this over the enchiladas and sprinkle them heavily with more grated jack cheese and sliced olives. These can be made ahead and refrigerated or baked at once at 375 degrees for 40 minutes. I serve these with extra bowls of sour cream and guacamole and a casserole of Arroz a la Mexicana. To make a Mexican-style rice casserole, I first saute 1.5 cups of converted rice in 2 tablespoons of melted butter and 3 tablespoons of oil. When the rice is golden brown, I pour it into an earthenware casserole with a lid. I then add 1/2 a chopped bell pepper, 6 chopped green onions, and a can of stewed tomatoes. I usually can't resist adding a small can of sliced olives before I pour in 2.5 cups of boiling water. I always try to include a cup of frozen or fresh green peas, too. They provide a color and a texture contrast and sneak in a few vitamins at the same time. I cover this tightly and bake it at 375 degrees for about 45 minutes. This makes a delicate accompaniment for our Enchiladas Acapulco. In Mexico, salads are treated differently than we are used to. I think most of us are familiar with tacos and tostadas with lettuce in them as the Mexican versions of salad. Well, there are other intriguing possibilities for the salad course. Fruit plays an important role in Mexican food. In any Mexican city, there are vendors selling pieces, slices, and chunks of chilled fresh fruit on the streets. A noble idea and a slap in the face for junk food. We are going to make a salad that includes some of these fruits. It is known as Pico de Gallo Anaranjado. This refers to a rooster's beak, for many people eat the salad with their fingers, picking up chunks of fruit like a rooster pecks at corn. I first break 2 clean, chilled heads of romaine into a salad bowl. I then thinly sliver jicama, a large grayish-brown root vegetable with a sweet flavor. We need about a cup of slivers or thin strips, and then peel, seed, and thinly slice a cucumber and half a red onion, too. I dice half a bell pepper and thinly slice a peeled orange. I arrange all these ingredients on the bed of romaine. I then make a simple dressing of 1/2 cup olive oil, 1/3 of a cup of red wine vinegar or lime juice, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I drizzle this over the fruits and lettuce just before I serve it. Even though fingers are traditional, I happen to provide forks for my guests. The enchiladas, rice, and salad make a lovely meal, but I usually wrap a dozen or more corn tortillas in foil and heat them in the oven for about 20 minutes. These make a good addition to the meal. They taste great with butter melting on them. Now, the Mexicans traditionally drink beer with their meals. Dos Equis or Carta Blanca are some of the outstanding Mexican beers. But a Sangría Bianca could be served with this. To make a Sangría Bianca, you merely macerate a sliced orange, banana, and a sliced quarter of a pineapple in a large glass pitcher with 2 bottles of white wine, 4 tablespoonsful of sugar, and then when it's time to serve it, I add a cup of brandy or Cointreau and serve it all in tall glasses over ice garnished with fruit. It's a charming, authentic addition and delicious, too. After a meal with chili peppers and warm sauces, I always like something cool and refreshing. On my last trip to Guadalajara, I enjoyed an amusing dessert at a lovely outdoor cafe after a superb meal of spit-roasted lamb. The sun was just sinking behind the hills after a sultry, steamy Mexican day. I was pleasantly surprised when my waiter brought out cantaloupes cut in quarters and filled with scoops of vanilla ice cream and lemon sherbet. He produced a bottle of Kahlua and one of banana liqueur and poured both of them over the sherbet and the ice cream. I was a little apprehensive, but believe me, the combination was divine. He also doused my piping hot coffee with Kahlua and dropped in a couple of cinnamon sticks. Needless to say, I was virtually enchanted. Now your guests will be too. Light every candle in the house and strew fresh flowers everywhere. Invite your most entertaining friends, particularly those who have a guitar, and have a fiesta of La Cocina Mexicana. Ole.